You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. Who do you think you are? Maybe they don't say it outright. Maybe it's in their smirks, their dismissive glances, their carefully crafted jokes that cut deeper than insults ever could. They don't just want to put you down, they want you to believe it, to internalize their doubt until it becomes your own. And the worst part, you start to question yourself. You wonder if they're right. You feel smaller, weaker, less certain of who you are. But let me tell you something, none of it is real. People who try to diminish you aren't powerful. They're afraid of what you'll become if you stop listening to them. Afraid that if you rise, their control over you will vanish. And they're right. Because the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop seeking their approval, is the moment they lose all power over you. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving them wrong. This is about reclaiming yourself. And Stoicism holds the key. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll never let anyone make you feel small again. Seeing through the manipulator. David sat across the dinner table, his hands tightening around his fork. His brother leaned back in his chair, smirking as he delivered yet another subtle jab. "You still working that job? Thought you'd have done something more by now." Laughter rippled through the table. Just a few chuckles, but enough to make David's chest tighten. He felt it again, that sinking weight in his stomach, that old familiar question gnawing at him. Am I really not good enough? He wanted to say something, to defend himself, to explain that he was building something, that his work mattered. But then came the worst part, the silence. His father sipped his drink. His mother changed the subject. No one spoke up. No one challenged it. The message was clear. His success, his worth, his voice didn't matter. And that is exactly how they wanted him to feel. If you've ever been in a moment like this, you know the feeling. The dismissal, the carefully veiled insults, the passive-aggressive comments wrapped in fake concern. People who try to make you feel small rarely attack you outright. Instead, they wear you down slowly until you start doing their work for them, until you start questioning yourself, doubting yourself, shrinking just enough to fit the version of you that they have created. But why? Why do some people seem determined to undermine you? Why do they try so hard to make you doubt your worth? The answer is simple: power. They don't need you to fail. They just need you to believe that you can't win. They need you to feel inferior, insecure, uncertain, because the moment you stop believing in yourself, you become controllable. The moment you start explaining yourself, defending yourself, proving yourself, you hand over your power. This is how manipulation works. It's not about truth or fairness. It's about control. A boss who constantly criticizes your work, a friend who always finds a way to diminish your achievements, a partner who makes you feel like you'll never be good enough for them. They all share the same goal. They keep you doubting yourself because it keeps them in control. And here's the part no one tells you. It has nothing to do with you. People who try to make others feel small are not powerful. They are afraid. They are insecure. They see something in you, something they lack, something they cannot control. Maybe it's your confidence. Maybe it's your ability to stand firm in your beliefs. Maybe it's your refusal to live by their expectations. Whatever it is, it unsettles them. And so, they do the only thing they can. They try to bring you down to their level. This is where Stoicism becomes your shield. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What they say about you does not reflect you. It reflects them." Think about that for a moment. The power they hold over you is not real. It is an illusion. It only exists when you react, when you engage, when you believe them. But what happens when you stop? The next time someone tries to make you feel small, remember this: their words are a reflection of them, not of you. Their insecurities do not define you, their fears do not limit you, and their approval is not something you need. Do not react, do not shrink, do not explain, simply rise. Because no one can make you feel small unless you allow it. So how do you handle these situations? How do you protect yourself without lowering yourself? Stoicism holds the answer. How to handle those who try to make you feel small without arguing or lowering yourself. Some battles are won by fighting, others by refusing to engage. There will always be people who try to make you feel small through comparison, mockery, contempt, or outright dismissal. Their goal is simple: to assert control by making you doubt yourself. But here's the truth. You don't need their approval, and you don't owe them a response. The greatest power is not in arguing, not in proving, but in remaining unshaken. This is where Stoicism gives us an undeniable advantage. It teaches us to master our reactions, protect our peace, and reclaim our space, without lowering ourselves to their level. Here's how. 1. Don't play their game. Refuse to compare yourself. Sophia sat across from her aunt at a family gathering, listening as the woman praised her cousin's new job. "You know, Olivia just got promoted again. She's moving to New York for a high-level finance position. You two are the same age. Have you thought about stepping up your career?" Sophia felt the familiar sting of comparison. She loved her job as a teacher, but suddenly it felt small, less impressive. She was about to explain herself, but then she stopped. Why should she defend her choices? Why should she justify the life she had intentionally built? She took a sip of her drink, smiled, and said, "I'm really happy with what I do." Her aunt blinked, waiting for an explanation, but Sophia gave none. Comparison is only a weapon if you accept the premise that someone else's success diminishes yours. The moment you refuse to compete in a race that isn't yours, you take away their power. 2. When they mock you, use the power of indifference. Daniel had always been passionate about art. He didn't care that his job didn't come with a six-figure salary. He loved what he did. But that didn't stop his so-called friends from making subtle digs. "You still trying to be an artist?" One of them smirked. "Must be nice to avoid real work." The group chuckled, waiting for Daniel to get defensive, to argue, to prove that his work had value. But he didn't. He simply leaned back, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Interesting perspective." Then he went back to his meal. The laughter died. The energy shifted. His indifference was a shield. Mockery thrives on reaction. The less you give, the weaker it becomes. 3. When they show contempt, stand tall and own your space. Maya had just finished giving her input during a meeting when her manager sighed loudly and shook his head. "That's one way to look at it," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. She felt her colleagues glance at her, waiting to see how she would react. Should she defend her point? Should she call him out? Instead, she did something more powerful. She let the silence stretch. She didn't fidget. She didn't rush to explain herself. She simply sat there, composed, letting the weight of her idea speak for itself. Contempt is a subtler attack than direct insults. It doesn't openly challenge you, it dismisses you. It's the sighs, the eye rolls, the scoffs. It's the look that says, "You're not worth taking seriously." But here's what people don't realize. Contempt is a projection of insecurity. Epictetus once said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" Enchiridion 33.9. When you refuse to be diminished by contempt, when you hold your ground and let your presence speak louder than their dismissiveness, you show them a truth they cannot ignore, that their approval was never needed in the first place. So the next time someone looks down on you, don't argue. Don't try to prove your worth. Don't shrink. Simply stand tall, own your space, and let them reveal who they truly are. 4. When they try to undermine you, let your actions speak. James had always been the black sheep of his family. While his brothers followed traditional career paths, he took a risk, starting his own business. His father never missed an opportunity to remind him of the instability. "You know, your brother just bought a second house. Maybe it's time to think about a real job." James could have argued, listed his achievements, defended his work, but he didn't. He simply smiled and said, "We'll see." Then he went back to work, and a year later, when his business became more successful than any of them expected, he didn't have to say a single word. The best response to doubt isn't an argument. It's proving them wrong through quiet success. 5. When they try to control you, detach and walk away. Not every battle is worth fighting. Some people will never respect you. They will twist your words, dismiss your ideas, and refuse to acknowledge your worth, no matter what you do. For Ava, this realization came when she had lunch with an old friend. Every time she shared something about her life, her friend found a way to undermine it. "You're still single?" she asked, shaking her head. "I don't know how you do it. I could never be alone like that." Ava had spent years feeling like she had to explain herself, to convince others that her choices were valid, but now she saw it for what it was, an attempt to make her feel small. So she simply smiled, took a sip of her drink, and said, "I love my life." And that was the end of it. Because when someone tries to control the way you see yourself, the strongest move isn't to argue, it's to detach completely. The final truth: you were never small to begin with. They want you to react. They want you to shrink. They want you to seek their approval. But you don't have to. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to prove anything to those who refuse to see your worth. The greatest power lies in remaining unshaken, in standing tall even when they try to make you feel small, in walking away from their pettiness with your dignity intact. So the next time someone tries to diminish you, don't explain, don't defend, don't engage. Simply rise, because no one can make you feel small unless you allow it. And here's the truth: this is just the beginning. Remaining unshaken is powerful, but true mastery comes when you set clear boundaries that protect your peace. Because it's not just about handling these situations in the moment, it's about ensuring they don't have the space to keep happening. When someone repeatedly tries to make you feel small, it's not enough to simply rise above. You must also draw the line and make it clear that their behavior is unacceptable. This is where self-respect turns into action. This is where Stoicism meets strength. 6. Protect yourself. Set clear boundaries. No one can make you feel small unless you allow it. Emma had spent years tolerating subtle jabs from her best friend, Julia. It wasn't outright hostility, but it was always there. The condescending tone, the passive-aggressive comments, the little reminders that Julia saw herself as superior. "You're still at the same company?" Julia asked one evening over dinner. "I just don't know how you do it. I'd be so bored." Emma laughed it off, as she always did. But this time, something inside her shifted. She wasn't laughing because it was funny. She was laughing because it was easier than setting a boundary. But why was she protecting Julia's comfort more than her own self-respect? She realized then that she had been allowing this to happen. She had never made it clear that Julia's remarks were unacceptable. And that night, she decided, no more. If you've ever felt trapped in cycles of being belittled, undermined, or disrespected, ask yourself this: what have I been tolerating? Most people don't push boundaries because they're inherently cruel. They do it because they can. If someone consistently disrespects you and you let it slide, they will continue. If someone makes you feel small and you don't push back, they assume it's acceptable. This is human nature. People will test your limits, even unconsciously. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for their behavior, but you are responsible for what you allow. And when you finally draw the line, something powerful happens. They either learn to respect your boundaries, or they lose access to you. Either way, you win. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Letters to Lucilius. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about ensuring that you surround yourself with those who bring out the best in you, not those who diminish you. A true Stoic does not waste time in situations that drain their energy, nor do they fight unnecessary battles. Instead, they set firm, silent limits and enforce them with unwavering consistency. This isn't about revenge. It's not about proving anything. It's about quietly making it clear, this is not acceptable. Liam's father had a habit of comparing him to his brother. "James just bought his second house. You're still renting, aren't you?" In the past, Liam would have explained how he was saving, how he was making different choices. But this time, he understood what was really happening. It wasn't about his success. It was about control. So instead of defending himself, Liam calmly responded, "I'm not interested in this conversation." He didn't explain. He didn't justify. And in that moment, his father felt it, the shift. The realization that this topic was no longer a tool to make Liam feel small. The most powerful way to end toxic comparisons is to refuse to participate. Rachel was known as the quiet one in her friend group. One night at a party, someone laughed and said, "You never say anything. What's wrong? Don't have an opinion?" A few people chuckled, waiting to see if Rachel would get flustered. But instead of reacting, she simply looked at them, unimpressed, and said, "That's an interesting thing to say." Then she turned back to her drink, completely unfazed. The laughter stopped. The person who mocked her suddenly looked foolish. Because here's the secret. Mockery needs fuel. Indifference starves it. Ethan was in a meeting when his colleague interrupted him mid-sentence. "I think what Ethan is trying to say is..." The room tensed. Ethan felt the immediate instinct to argue, to prove himself. But he didn't. Instead, he calmly said, "I don't need help explaining my thoughts. I've got this." He held his colleague's gaze for a moment, then continued speaking as if nothing had happened. When someone tries to diminish you in front of others, meet them with quiet authority, not anger, not defensiveness, just certainty. And just like that, he reclaimed his voice. Not everyone will respect your boundaries the first time. Some will test you, waiting to see if you're serious. This is where real strength comes in. Sophia had a co-worker who constantly interrupted her. She addressed it politely once. "Please let me finish my thought before jumping in." But the interruptions continued. So the next time it happened, she didn't just repeat herself, she stopped the meeting. "I've mentioned this before. If you continue, I'll have to ask the manager to step in." The room fell silent. A boundary without consequences is just a suggestion, and once you enforce it, people start taking you seriously. Reading this is one thing, implementing it is another. So here's your challenge. Write down 3 boundaries you will enforce starting today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because protecting your peace isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And once you start drawing the line, you'll wonder why you ever tolerated anything less. When you refuse to engage in toxic comparisons, when you don't give mockery the reaction it craves, when you calmly assert yourself in public, when you enforce real consequences, you send a message louder than words. You tell the world, "I know my worth. I do not shrink, and I do not tolerate disrespect." And the moment you do that, something incredible happens. People who truly value you will respect it, and those who don't, they'll fade away. Because in the end, you don't have to fight to prove your worth. You just have to stand firm in it. Establishing boundaries protects your peace, but true strength lies in what you do next. Because setting limits isn't just about keeping negativity out. It's about channeling that energy into something greater. Now, it's time to take the final step, transforming their doubt, their condescension, their attempts to make you feel small into fuel for your own growth. This is where Stoicism moves beyond defense and into power. This is where you turn negativity into motivation. 7. Transform negativity into motivation. Some people try to break you with their words. What they don't realize is that they're handing you the very tools to build yourself stronger. Ethan was 15 when his father told him he would never amount to much. "You don't have what it takes to succeed," his father had said, shaking his head as Ethan struggled with his schoolwork. Those words burned into his mind. Every failure felt like proof that his father had been right. Until one day, Ethan made a decision. He would prove him wrong. Not through arguments, not through bitterness, but through action. He turned every doubt, every insult, every attempt to belittle him into fuel. When he felt like giving up, he reminded himself exactly why he couldn't. Years later, standing in the office of the business he built from the ground up, he realized something powerful. It was never about proving his father wrong. It was about proving to himself what he was capable of. People who try to make you feel small don't need to win. You decide what power their words hold. You decide whether their negativity becomes a wall or a stepping stone. It's easy to take criticism personally. When someone belittles you, it feels like an attack on your identity, your worth, your very existence. But what most people don't realize is that what they say about you has nothing to do with you. A person who constantly tears others down is revealing more about themselves than about the people they target. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." Letters to Lucilius. The words that hurt you today can become the weight that builds your strength, if you choose to lift them instead of letting them bury you. The real question is, how do you take negativity and turn it into something powerful? Instead of running from negative words, confront them head-on. Write down the worst things people have said about you, the criticisms, the dismissive comments, the times someone made you feel small. Then ask yourself, are these words facts or are they just opinions? 9 times out of 10, they are nothing more than someone else's insecurity projected onto you. And when you see them written down, they lose their power. They become just words, and words alone cannot define you. What if every insult was actually a challenge? Instead of letting negativity break you, use it as motivation. If someone says, "You'll never be successful," take that as a direct mission. Prove to yourself just how wrong they are. If someone says, "You're too weak," ask yourself, what can I do to become stronger? Rachel had always been told she was too quiet, that she needed to speak up if she wanted to be taken seriously. Instead of trying to change who she was to fit others' expectations, she refined her ability to listen, to observe, to choose her words carefully. Years later, she became a sought-after mediator, someone who could cut through noise with clarity and wisdom. Her so-called weakness became her greatest strength. The most powerful response to someone who tries to make you feel small is not to argue, not to explain yourself, but to rise. James had a teacher in high school who told him he wasn't smart enough for college. That comment could have broken him. Instead, he used it as a reason to study harder, to work relentlessly, to build a life beyond what anyone had expected. Years later, when he graduated at the top of his class, he didn't go back to that teacher to prove anything. His success spoke for itself, and that's the real secret. You don't need to fight their words. You just need to live in a way that makes them irrelevant. The moment you stop seeking validation, the moment you stop letting their words define you, you reclaim your power. The greatest revenge is not anger, not proving them wrong, but becoming so focused on your own growth that their words simply don't matter anymore. Take the negativity you've been given and turn it into something unstoppable. Because in the end, it was never about them. It was always about you. Turning negativity into fuel is a powerful step, but true growth doesn't happen in isolation. The people around you shape your mindset, your confidence, and your ability to keep rising. If you're constantly surrounded by those who belittle you, doubt you, or drain your energy, no amount of inner strength will fully protect you. That's why the next step is crucial. Intentionally building a circle that elevates you, not one that holds you back. This is where real transformation begins. 8. Build a positive circle. No one thrives in isolation. You might have the strongest mindset, the best self-discipline, and an unshakable sense of self-worth. But if you're constantly surrounded by people who belittle you, dismiss your dreams, or drain your energy, you'll find yourself fighting an uphill battle. A plant cannot grow in toxic soil, and neither can you. Ethan had always been ambitious. He wanted more out of life, but every time he shared his dreams, the same thing happened. His friends laughed. His co-workers rolled their eyes. His family reminded him to be realistic. Every time he spoke about the goals he was working toward, someone had a way of making him feel foolish. "You really think you can do that?" they'd ask, half smiling. At first, he tried to convince them. He explained his plans, defended his choices, and worked even harder, hoping they'd finally take him seriously. But no matter what he did, their responses never changed. Then it hit him. They weren't doubting his abilities. They were reflecting their own limitations. If you surround yourself with people who only see obstacles, soon you'll start believing in limits that don't exist. If you spend too much time with those who belittle you, you'll shrink to fit their expectations. Not everyone deserves a place in your life. You become what you repeatedly experience. If you're constantly exposed to negativity, your mindset absorbs it. If the people around you operate from fear, scarcity, or doubt, it will seep into your thinking, no matter how strong you are. That's why the company you keep matters. Epictetus once said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best discourses." If you want to grow, you need to be around people who challenge you, support you, and push you to be better, not those who hold you back. Negativity isn't always obvious. Some people don't insult you directly, but they subtly undermine you. They plant doubt in your mind. They dismiss your dreams as unrealistic. They laugh at your ideas or respond with silence instead of encouragement. Sometimes the most damaging relationships are the ones disguised as friendships. Rachel had a best friend, Lisa, whom she had known since childhood. But over the years, Rachel noticed a pattern. Every time she accomplished something, Lisa had a way of downplaying it. "You got a promotion? Well, let's see if you can handle the pressure. You're starting a business? That's cute, but most people fail." At first, Rachel ignored it. Then she justified it. Lisa was just being honest. But one day, after sharing exciting news and getting yet another dismissive remark, Rachel finally saw the truth. Lisa wasn't supporting her. Lisa was holding her back. So Rachel made a choice, not to hate Lisa, not to fight, but simply to step back. She stopped seeking validation from someone who would never give it and refocused her energy on those who genuinely wanted to see her win. If you have someone in your life who makes you doubt yourself, who drains your energy, who subtly or blatantly tries to keep you small, ask yourself, why am I allowing this? Recognizing these people is the first step. The second, creating distance. You don't just need people who support you, you need people who push you. Friends who encourage your ambitions, mentors who stretch your thinking, peers who celebrate your success instead of feeling threatened by it. James had always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but he spent years surrounded by people who played it safe. Friends who saw their jobs as burdens, not opportunities, and family members who believed risk was reckless, and it showed. He hesitated. He second-guessed himself. He let their fears become his. Until one day, he met a group of entrepreneurs at a networking event. Their energy was different. They didn't complain about their work. They talked about ideas, strategies, possibilities. They saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. That single night changed everything. He started spending more time with them, learning from them, absorbing their mindset. And before he knew it, he was no longer just thinking about starting a business. He was doing it. The people around you should elevate you, not limit you. They should make you think bigger, not smaller. If they don't, it's time to shift your circle. Not everyone deserves access to you. A common mistake people make is feeling guilty for outgrowing certain relationships. But the truth is, you can care about someone and still recognize that they are not good for your growth. Sophia had a group of childhood friends she still kept in touch with, but every time they met, the conversation was the same. Complaints about work, gossip about people from high school, stories about how life wasn't fair. One day she asked herself, "Is this how I want to spend my time?" The answer was no. So she started making different choices. She didn't cut people off dramatically. She just spent more time with those who energized her, who made her think, who challenged her to grow. Over time, her life changed. Not because she got rid of people, but because she chose where to invest her energy. You don't have to cut everyone off overnight. Just start shifting your focus. The right people will naturally become a bigger part of your life, while the wrong ones will fade away. Reading this is one thing. Applying it is another. So here's your challenge. Write down 3 people who uplift you, people who make you feel motivated, confident, and capable. Make a plan to spend more time with them. Then write down 3 people who drain your energy. You don't need to cut them out immediately, but start creating distance. Protect your energy. Because the truth is, your environment shapes you more than you realize, and if you want to grow, you need to be in the right soil. 9. Remember that your worth is not determined by others. Olivia had spent years chasing validation. Every accomplishment felt like a victory only when it was acknowledged by someone else. But when there was no applause, when people dismissed her work or ignored her entirely, she felt a familiar doubt creeping in. Was she only successful if others said so? That question lingered in her mind until one evening at a family dinner. Her cousin was being praised endlessly for landing a high-profile job, while Olivia, who had built a thriving business from nothing, sat unnoticed. For a fleeting moment, she felt that old urge to prove herself, to justify her choices. But then, something inside her shifted. Why was she waiting for others to validate what she already knew? Her business mattered. Not because her family acknowledged it, but because she did. And in that moment, she understood the truth. Her worth was never theirs to decide. This is the final step in rising above those who try to make you feel small. You have already learned how to recognize their tactics, how to refuse their game, how to set boundaries, and how to turn negativity into motivation. But all of that means nothing if, deep down, you still believe that your worth depends on someone else's ability to see it. That belief is the last chain keeping you tied to them, and today it breaks. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek approval, a teacher's praise, a parent's encouragement, a boss's recognition. These moments reinforce the idea that our value is something external, something given to us rather than something we inherently possess. But what happens when approval isn't given? When someone dismisses your work, belittles your choices, or acts as if your accomplishments are insignificant? Too often, people assume that if others don't acknowledge their worth, it must not exist. They internalize rejection. They shrink themselves, waiting for validation that may never come. But Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A person's worth is not measured by the opinions of others." It is a simple truth that so many fail to grasp. The only person who decides your value is you. And the moment you stop seeking external validation, you take away the last bit of power those who try to make you feel small have over you. Most of the time, when people diminish you, it has nothing to do with you. It's about them, their insecurities, their fears, their own unresolved struggles. James had always been passionate about writing, but his father never took it seriously. "That's not a real job," he would say, dismissing his work without a second thought. For years, James carried that doubt, wondering if his father was right. But one day, as he stood in a bookstore, looking at a shelf lined with books just like the one he was about to publish, it hit him. His father's words weren't about him. They were about his father's fear of an uncertain path. This is how most people operate. When they mock, belittle, or ignore you, they are not speaking about your abilities. They are revealing their own limitations. And the moment you understand that, their words lose their weight. The greatest mistake you can make is living for the approval of others. If your self-worth depends on recognition, you will always be chasing something beyond your control. Emma learned this the hard way. She believed success was measured by accomplishments, so she collected them, degrees, promotions, accolades. But no matter how much she achieved, it never felt like enough. There was always another milestone, another person doing better, another reason to doubt herself. One day she asked herself a simple but profound question. If I lost everything tomorrow, who would I be? That moment changed everything. She realized that her worth wasn't tied to her career, her social status, or anyone else's perception of her success. It was in her resilience, her kindness, her ability to create, to learn, to grow. And once she embraced that truth, she stopped needing anyone else to see it. This is the shift that sets you free. You stop explaining, you stop justifying, you stop proving. Instead, you start trusting yourself. Sophia had spent years seeking reassurance, asking others if she was making the right choices, waiting for someone to confirm that she was good enough. But one day, she made a decision. She would no longer ask, "Do they think I'm doing well?" Instead, she would ask herself, "Do I think I'm doing well?" That is the only question that matters. And if you are still unsure, here's a challenge. Write down 5 things you are proud of. Things that matter to you, regardless of whether anyone else acknowledges them. Your growth, your courage, your effort, your kindness, your resilience. The more you practice self-validation, the less power external opinions will have over you. This is the last step, the moment you fully reclaim your power. You have learned to recognize their tactics. You have refused to engage in their game. You have set boundaries. You have turned negativity into motivation. You have built a positive circle. And now you release the last illusion that their opinion ever mattered in the first place. People will judge. They will misunderstand. They will fail to see your worth. That does not change your worth. So stop waiting for approval. Stop explaining yourself. Stop trying to make them understand. You don't need permission to be valuable. You already are. No one can make you feel small unless you allow them. Throughout this journey, you've learned to recognize manipulation, refuse to react on their terms, set firm boundaries, transform negativity into fuel, surround yourself with those who uplift you, and, most importantly, understand that your worth is not defined by anyone but yourself. This is not just about standing tall in the face of those who try to diminish you. It's about something much deeper. It's about reclaiming your power, your confidence, and your ability to live without being controlled by external validation. The moment you stop playing their game, the moment you rise above their attempts to shrink you, you become untouchable. So now, the choice is yours. Will you continue giving them power, or will you step fully into the person you were meant to be? If you are walking the Stoic path, comment, "I am on the Stoic journey." Let's build a community of strength, wisdom, and resilience. If you found this message valuable, like and subscribe to join us on this journey of self-mastery, because the world does not get to decide who you are, only you do.